Today on the Videomaker Podcast, Chris and I talk about what it's like to make commercials for a living. That and not much more, coming up. But first, I want to quickly make you aware of Videomaker's email newsletter. It's full of great Videomaker articles covering the art and technology of video production. You'll find how-to articles, articles that cover the concepts and principles of visual storytelling, reviews of the latest video cameras and software, a roundup of the latest video news, buyer's guides that cover everything from camera support, computers, field monitors, and tons more. Plus, if you want to get alerts about our free instructional webinars and receive invitations to our in-person networking events across the United States, the Videomaker email newsletter is the best way to stay up to speed. Sign up today at videomaker.com/newsletter. That's videomaker.com/newsletter. Now, on to the show. Welcome to the Videomaker Podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and to my left, as always, is Chris Monlux.
What's happening?
And today, no one else. Just Chris and I today.
Just the two of us.
No guests, and Nicole is just busy wrapping up a bunch of stuff from leftover from the magazine workflow.
Yeah, except for, we have enough wisdom between the two of us on this subject that we're going to be good.
Yeah, that's right.
There's lots and lots of information on commercial production.
That's right. But before we get to that, I just want to hit a quick housekeeping note. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Videomaker.com or you're anywhere else for that matter, we would love it if you would go to iTunes, and we'll provide a link for that, and subscribe there and leave us a 5-star review. iTunes is really important for young podcasts like us. iTunes is still like the biggest player in this industry. So good reviews, good subscriptions really help to boost our presence there. So we would love it if you went there and subscribed and rated us.
Do it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that being said, I think we can just dive right into it. Yeah. So it's Chris and I today. We've both been working at Videomaker for quite some time. How long have you been here, Chris?
5 years in January.
Coming up on 5th year anniversary. I've been here for... it'll be 8 years in January. But before that, coincidentally, we both had careers in commercial production. So it seems like a great topic for the two of us to discuss.
Yeah, it's interesting because I worked at a TV station making ads for CBS and NBC and CW affiliate, but Mike did cable. So we were kind of rivals for a little while. We didn't even know each other. Working in the same town, making commercials, and there was a little overlap there. I think of a couple of years, where cable doesn't know what they're doing, and broadcast doesn't know what they're doing, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it seemed like they were very different markets or different things, at least from our perspective. So maybe it was just because on the cable side we could never compete with broadcast in terms of like ratings on any particular channel. The closest we would ever come was ESPN, which does pretty good, but it's not. Broadcast. We never had the Super Bowl. Never had any kind of primetime TV, nothing like that. So we always built up just the fact that you could drill into these niches if you wanted to advertise. Like if you wanted to advertise just to stay-at-home moms, you'd go to this channel. And if you want a
garden show,
exactly. If you want to advertise to a more wealthy viewership, you go to this channel. And if you wanted to advertise to younger people, you go to this channel. So that's our big thing, and we tried to really play that up in our commercials as well, and customize it for whatever those audiences were.
We really were the guys making the commercials. So we had salesmen out there going to the local brands around town and to sell the advertisement. And the big thing is you got to have an ad to play an ad. So that they usually came along with a production team that would make the ad so that they'd make money on selling the airtime.
Yep.
So the productions were not big dollar productions. In fact, for the longest time, we were making ads for $300 and $500 at max, and people were screaming at those prices, which is just crazy. But then they'd spend $50,000 on running ads for the next month. So a lot of very different there. We did work with. I was greenhorn all the way to being running the department, and so got to see a lot of different things there. Most of it though is just relationships is really, the production side of it, that's all fun, but most of the stuff ended up being how well you executed what they sold, and hopefully they told you what they sold. I've made plenty of ads with, they handed me the business card for the business and said, okay, make us a 30-second ad. And it's like, okay, so I know where their address is and I know what their logo looks like. Sweet.
Yeah, I always remember we had the same kind of thing where it was a big advertising buy and they threw in production for cheap, like a few $100. And it never costs a few $100 to make a commercial. Like just the time you put into it is probably more than that, let alone the equipment that goes into it, the resources that you need in terms of music and all that kind of stuff. Yet, I don't know about you, Chris, but I felt like that strategy made the perception of the value of the commercial a little less than it should have been.
Yeah, it was like, well, when things are thrown in, and that was, we had that problem a long time. The salesman, oh yeah, we'll throw it in. And, for them it was pennies, but for us it was our budget. It was like what we were trying to make. So that was always a struggle of like, you're devaluing what I'm doing less than what it takes us to actually do. And then the expectations on me is that we at least make what we cost in a year. And we had a team of 5 at one point. So, 5 salaries selling commercials for $300 a pop doesn't go very far. So you got to be doing a lot of turnover, a lot of work, a lot of commercials. So I'd say, so I was doing it for 7.5 years, and I bet you I made well over 3,000 ads, if not more than that. We are definitely putting out as a team 1,000 a year, which is crazy. And when I started for the first 5 years was just 3 of us. But we had, because it was during, from 2007 to, 2011 or so, it was such a downturn that it was like, well, no one was moving around. No one was looking for other jobs because they weren't out there. So it was great to have a job that was there and could make, some people weren't moving around. So we had some veterans in there and really knew the system. And it was, I kind of take it for granted now, or I did at the time, because it was like, man, you could meet us in the morning, first thing in the morning, and by the end of the day, you'd have an ad. And, nothing existed before that, and it would be a great ad. And it's like, wow, that's pretty fantastic. But that's, when everybody knows the system, the process, and you have all the infrastructure to make that happen. We started out making our commercials on our computer, putting them out to beta tape, walking them across the parking lot, handing them to the master control operators, where they would digitize the beta tape to play it on air. And I always thought that was silly, and we eventually meant it so we could send a file over. Mm-hmm. And I remember that was like, oh my gosh, what do they need? Can we, and we found, it's SD at first, but we can send them an HD spot, and they would letterbox and look so good. Oh man, I was so excited to get my HD commercial played in SD.
I remember that. So Chris and I worked in the same market, as well as Chris's former boss, Greg Olson, a former Videomaker editor, also worked there. Yeah. And when I started making commercials, I think Greg was already over there, and we would send dubs or copies back and forth on tape. Yeah. People would just like drive them back and forth, right? And then I don't know, it must have taken so let's see, I started doing commercials in 2006, I guess. Okay. And it probably took 2 or 3 years before, Greg and I, who barely said a word to each other, maybe just in coordinating, dubs back and forth here or there, we're just like, can you take like a digital file? Do I have to drive this over to you? And
yeah, it was like the technical people were finally like, the salesmen just want to drive something over. But the salesman, I have stories about them. We'd send them a digital copy of a script. They'd print it out, write their notes on it, and then fax it back to us. And I was like, oh my Lord, can you just be in the digital world? Like, come on. And it definitely, by the time we left, we had, a network area storage that we had all of our history of footage. But we once had a room that was 20 feet by 10 feet that was full of beta and mini DV tapes. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And it was just amazing. And it was the source footage to the finished product of thousands of ads. And I don't know how many times company would be like, oh yeah, we made this ad a few years ago, and it ended up being like 13 years ago. And, it's like their son's in college now, but they're jumping on a bed in the commercial as a little child or whatever. And I always was like, wait, why can't you guys make another ad? But the big thing about advertising is if it's still working, don't change it. And that was the biggest thing. Is like, man, we put this on, it works because people saw it. And so my big goal, once we started getting a little deeper, when I was like, man, I feel comfortable making an ad, let's make an ad that can work a little bit better. Let's try to understand how to make this better so it works better, not necessarily on the production side, but if we can make it work better, we can get bigger budgets or more trust. And the trust was really where I was at. And locally here,
that's like the currency of a producer or director, is that trust.
Yeah, totally. It was because if they were willing to trust what we could do, we could make something even better for them, and we wouldn't necessarily have to sell them on the idea. They would just know we could make them something good, or they knew we had their best intentions or best interests involved. But that was really the driving force for me to like, oh man, and that's like when I started in management, it was really, okay, how do we figure out what these people are trying to do, figure out the essence of what they're trying to achieve, and then communicate that into a commercial. But if you made one commercial, it's like, man, I knew how many words I could fit on a page, how many words I liked to fit in an ad. I knew, the beats of a 30-second ad or a 15-second ad or even a 60. You just get this feel. And I remember when I came here to Videomaker, it was like, oh, I don't have to hit the nose on, I could do 30 and a half seconds. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember we were counting frames.
Oh yeah, totally.
It wasn't 30 seconds and one frame. It was 30 seconds.
30 seconds. And I remember when we first started doing digital files, it was like add a couple black frames on each side so they could trim them. And then we realized the master control operators weren't trimming anything. And so it was like, oh, no, don't give them any black frames. Yep. Give them everything on the nose. But I think I remember first seeing your name on a slate on a beta tape.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, because the slate said it was like a little video clip that ran for 5 seconds and then 5 seconds of black. And then the ad. Yeah,
to say like who made it, where it came from, and then also what the company was, what the name of the spot was. Yeah. And that was that was a big thing, that is just reconciling the name of the commercial to what the salesman put in as running the commercial. So like the hardest thing would be furniture store 1. Oh, yeah. It's like I have 10 furniture store clients. And all of them are running ads. Furniture store 1. Come on, let's do it. Let's label these things a little bit better so we can actually figure out what they are and all that. But really, the coolest thing is just working. We do. If it was a big shoot, a real important client, we'd have 3 people on it. So we'd have a producer, a DP, and a audio engineer, and that was it. And we did just about everything with a small lighting kit. We shot on a Panasonic DVX 100, maybe 200, like one of the first camcorders that shot 24p.
Yeah, and 16:9.
Yeah, and 16:9, and like that was awesome. And then we graduated up to the 7D when we finally got an interchangeable lens. And we'd bring our bigger body camera on the shoots, just so people would think we were more professional, because as soon as you pull out at that time a DSLR, they're like, oh, you're taking pictures. They didn't get it. And it was just so amazing. Like, I have to trick these people into thinking like I'm bringing night, and it's like we were just using the cameras to record audio. Like, oh, it's a digital audio because the audio on DSLRs and the preamp sucks. So we're like, oh, well, this has actual controls. It's a lot easier. We can put XLR right into it. All we got to do is sync it in post. We're good. Yeah. But man, I remember some days we'd go and make ads for maybe a car dealership, and we'd start off in the morning not knowing anything. Get there, and there might be a director there that a production team hired and brought there just to organize stuff, and we'd shoot 15 different ads in a day, and then send the tape to some dude to edit them, and then 2 weeks later we'd see them, and then all the way to the other side of it, whereas same thing, wouldn't know a thing, and we'd have to shoot the same amount of ads, and we just had to
make it work.
Yeah, use our best goal, what we've done in the past. Okay, I'll have you talk for this amount of time. I'll have this much time to write copy, and hope it all fits together. We could always make it work. And that was, the good thing is it was very much a magic trick of like, I'd want you to look over here so I can not have you look at the mistake I made, or we always were all about After Effects and doing motion graphics, because that was really a thing that others were charging extra for. So we were, if we could do a commercial spot without having to shoot at all, then, well, I just saved myself driving to the place, the 2 or 3 hours we were there to shoot, driving back. We could just get straight to making the ad right off the bat. And so, I remember going to a furniture store and shooting all day and then making ads for the next 4 years off of that footage.
I can tell you, I've done a handful of those ads as well, where it's like all in After Effects. It's like you don't need to shoot anything. And what I found was that in a lot of cases you really could, start working on it and spend less time because you don't have to drive out there or spend a day shooting or get anyone to help you. In other cases, though, and maybe this is just me, although I don't think it necessarily is, you get into After Effects and you start working on it and you start piecing together what you want to do, and then it's like, oh, what would be cool is if it did this thing. Like, if I could just get like a really organic looking bounce across the screen with a motion blur or something that. That's pretty easy, but you have this idea, and then it's like, I got to figure out how to do that, and now I'm going to watch some tutorials, and now I'm going to try it out, and every time you do it, you're going to spend some time rendering, and then eventually it turns into like this big project for something that you show someone, and you're like, did you see that thing right there? And they're like, what?
Yeah. I remember doing an ad for a pumpkin patch, and I made little pumpkins jump up, and they're like, pick me at the beginning of the ad, and I remember I want to make them feel like they're floating and coming up, getting fatter, and then of course I did all that stuff. I'm like, that looks great, and then I also did one that didn't look good, and I kept the render, and then once I added the sound effect, it's like, I spent all that time trying to animate it, making it look all organic, and it was the sound effect that sold it.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn it, I just spent so much time on that, and that was the thing. But you live and learn. I really loved the graphic spots because it was like, we get more freedom because you get nothing. So, I'm just going to get on the internet and start searching. I don't know what I do now that Google doesn't give you the original size file. You have to go back to the website and use that file, and hopefully they allow you to do it. I guess I do more screen grabs or whatever, but I remember, I need a picture of a knife. I'm going to cut it out. It's going to be a knife by itself, but I got to find something. And we had clip art and that kind of thing, but it's so amazing how the internet has really facilitated a lot of that stuff. All of our music, we had CDs. We had a rack of discs, and on the disc we had a piece of sticker on them that wrote what brand used that song, so we wouldn't use it. So it would be like the branding music for that. And now, man, just go on a site and press play until you listen to it. You might even be able to listen to them at the same time. We had a CD player hooked up so we could try out songs to our cuts, like in real time. Press play, listen, watch it. Oh, okay, yeah, that feels good. And man, it's so funny that, and like beta tapes. I made an ad once. I taped it 10 different times on 10 different tapes because there kept on being hits all over the tape, because TV stations, especially local television stations, don't usually have a big budget, especially for like tapes, because tapes could be expensive. So we'd be reusing tapes. In fact, most of our tapes came from PSAs. So PSAs would come in the mail from the Army about every week, and we'd overdub on those and use those tapes. And man, it was just so painful. And then all of a sudden we can send files. Okay, where can we hide these decks so that when someone brings in a tape, we go, we can't do anything with that. Sorry. Or you're going to have to go see that person in the other building, and then they'll send us the file, and we don't have to deal with that BS. Just trying to get it simpler and simpler. And I remember by the time we left, it was like a computer, maybe a mixer, so you had some speakers, or you could go to headphones or whatever. We had a booth that was just a microphone going into a computer. Just the most simple, streamlined setup. And man, we used a lot of that equipment to make a lot of money. We were shooting, like I said, we were probably making 1,000 ads a year on less than $10,000 worth of equipment. Pretty impressive return on investment as far as the tools and that goes. But you get to. I remember just being able to learn about so many different types of businesses. Like when I was in college, I was not looking to do production for commercials. And I don't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do movies, but for whatever reason, TV commercials were like, oh, you're going to make ads. Well,
there was like this transitionary point where, and I think it really was the DSLR movement in 2008, where it's like video shot before 2008 had a cheesy soap opera look. And that was the case with all, local ads, and everyone always made fun of them. And then once, people were shooting on DSLRs, video shooters are like, whoa, I could make a movie with this. And I don't know, it was a combination of the technology plus like the added inspiration and the vision that I think people had, that just sort of that moment really elevated production. And the stigma, I think, kind of went away after that.
Yeah, and I noticed a big thing on local producers. So, it seems like, well, especially in a small town like we are in, we have this, like, you learn working the job that gets paid poorly, and then you go end up doing it on your own, or you go work for an agency or something like that. So you have a little bit more time to work on something, or you get paid more to do each one, or, whatever. And as people are getting older, they want to do less and get more for it, right? But are finding the veterans, they were in the old school thinking. They had invested in the last technology, so they were still slow to move to HD, slow to give us anything other than tapes. I mean, I remember one company, they'd give us a mini DV tape, and then we'd have to put it in a carrier and have it sent over to probably cable. Then it would go up 100 miles north to go to this TV station up there, and they all had to sign off on it and all this kind of thing. And you had like this old way of thinking, which wasn't necessarily bad. It was just the way everything was. It's like how photojournalists used to all wear, the vests, and they had a look to them, and now that look isn't in the professional field anymore unless you're of this era. And we just found that, man, our willingness to go into After Effects and make motion graphics blew out of the water anything they could do. They might be able to expose real well and focus, and they knew the relationships and all that kind of stuff, but we could really wow people over the productions they were doing just because we could put more pizzazz in it because it was more available. And also we were younger. And I feel like I'm in that space now of like, man, some people, well, I talk about a dub. What's a dub? And when I started, it wasn't even a dub. They called it an air cart. And I remember someone had asked me for an air cart, and I, like, on my first day at the station, and it was the general manager, and I had to go over to my boss, Greg, at the time. I'm like, Greg, and he just hired me. I didn't know him from anything. What's an air cart? I don't know what this is. And he goes, oh, it's just a tape. Yeah, they used to have a cart that they pushed around at the end of the day to get all the things that needed to go on, and like they'd have the show on there. So Oprah would be on a tape, and it needed to be on the air cart. So you'd make a air cart for the air cart. Anyway, it's just amazing the amount of technology that came out when we were there. We went from SD to HD, and it was just crazy because like they moved 2 rooms worth of technology out and had nothing to replace it with. So they ended up being like available for the news team, production team, and other things like that. And when we went from analog to digital broadcast, they just abandoned the old antenna and all of the broadcasting information, and were able to do it in a small little, like almost like outside bathroom size building and an antenna, whereas they had this huge, tubes the size of people inside. Just crazy amount of technology. And then the bills, like from the energy to put it out, was like $100,000 a month for the energy to push out the analog signal, and then it went to $10,000 just overnight when we switched to digital. It was incredible, but it's just that technology, and so some people would keep up with it, and there's a lot of churn. I don't know if there was a lot of turnover at cable, but at least in the news department, that was always how it is. And so news was always connected to the master control. And so people were coming in and out, and we were the same. We had the same people there for 5 years, which was crazy because I bet you the whole other station had turned over 3 times in the amount of time we were there.
Yeah, so cable was like, at least our office, there was nothing there. Like there was no station to speak of.
That's
it was
right.
Only a sales organization. It was like 6 salespeople, a sales manager, and then 2 producers.
Was there a master control that you sent tapes to?
Yep. So we sent. It's interesting. So we worked for one cable company, and then the ads ran on another cable company because the cable company we worked for didn't actually run the cable
broadcast.
They didn't run cable in the city. They just leased the cable's advertising space. So we would send our dubs and eventually files up to the town 100 miles north where they did do the cable stuff, and that's where everything was encoded and put into the schedule. And so actually, I don't have no idea what their turnover was. I didn't even know those people.
Yeah. And we're in Chico, Redding's north of us, and they're kind of sister markets. We're part of the largest broadcast area in all the country. our
by
market.
square miles.
By square miles, not people, not people at all, but by square miles, because it's a very large area, and like those are the two markets. If you ever heard Chico Redding, it's probably a reason. But regardless, the switchover. So we had people that worked in Redding, and I ended up hiring a producer that was only in Redding, and I just remember being a disconnect of like, how do I manage someone that's 100 miles away? And when telecommunications weren't where they're at today, it's definitely a difficult thing. But
yeah, my boss lived and worked in Redding, and I think I saw him face to face once every 2 months or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the opposite for us. We had some people up there, but I remember it was a big thing because one year, the company you were working for, they no longer wanted to make ads locally. They just had the salesman, and they were yielding all the production to us, which was a big boon.
That's probably right when I quit.
Totally.
I don't think they
didn't refulfill. Yeah. But then they also, all of the workers that were in Redding, the producers and the master control, also went away because we were sending dubs to a place in Denver that was playing out all of the ads for 40 different cable channels, and they 40 different cable channels in our market, and it probably ran it for 100 cities across the country, and it was just amazing. But that was where I learned, like, no, you can have really rigid expectations for people sending you files, because, man, I remember getting stuff that they get in master control, and we can't even play this file. So we'd have to figure out how to encode it and try to get it into the format they needed to. And, man, that's when we found Handbrake and other ways. I remember most everything could go into After Effects if we could export it out of After Effects, and just having to work our way around that. And that's what really gave us job security. It was like we ended up being the encoding guys, the guys that knew how to make the ad that wasn't going to work, or the ad that was made by the school that was 36 seconds and it needed to be a 30. So we could figure out how to pull out 6 seconds out of the ad. And I remember doing that. Man, before the transitions, I'm taking out a second here. All right, going into and editing someone else's work that we aren't even being paid to do just so it can play right on air. And these days, they don't even do that. Oh, it was 36 seconds. You get the first 30 seconds.
So let's talk about a little bit about how someone can get into this industry. So TV, well, I don't know. I'm not too connected these days with the business of television advertising. I imagine that it's not as big as it was when you were and I were in it with people watching so much on streaming services now. But
the money's still there. There's a lot of conglomerations and stuff, so there's maybe not as many jobs. But I mean, I was lucky that when I applied for my job, I was one of two people that applied, and it really just worked out that my friend that I was in a band with was also on the team, and he was like, "Hey, you should hire him if you're picking between two people." And I got my foot in the door, and that's all it took, is that first job. Once I got the experience there, all my schooling or anything I learned there is nice to have on a piece of paper, but it was really what would get me any other job or up the ladder or anything else.
So in my experience, if you want to get into this field and you want to get a job for a TV station doing this or the cable company, the main thing that a lot of people have to get over is the sort of the feeling of being an auteur, right? So like one of the big things, as Chris pointed out, is that this is a volume gig. Totally. Right? You got to do clean work, and you got to do a lot of it, and you got to be reliable with your deadlines. You don't need to make masterpiece work. And if you're the type of person who is going to try to pull hours away from this process, or buy some time from a sales rep who needs to get something on the air because you want to make a fantastic work of art, I don't think you're going to get very far with that attitude.
No, and the thing that always it's a hard thing to accept, to be like, okay, I have to dumb down my art to make a deadline, and that's hard, especially when you're new at creating consumable art. I mean, if you're just an artist and you don't care about making money, cool.
Do that, make art.
Do it. Yeah. But the thing is, you're going to have to. I have so many ads where it was like, okay, that was the ad I wanted to make, and they wanted to change something about it, and I go, okay, cool, I'm going to keep that for myself. I'll make that change, and hopefully you see the wisdom in what I made before, and the next time you'll give me another chance. And that was, that trust is really what it came down to. But really, it came down for me once this was proven to me over and over and over again. A bad spot with good placement will work. However, a good spot in bad placement will not, which really means if the ad runs when people are seeing it, it's likely it's going to work regardless if it's good or bad. It can work better, so you can have good placement and a good ad, but the thing is what part of that ad actually makes it work better? If you're talking about selling stuff, which is selling service or product or anything like that, it's all about, did it sell it better? And so, that's why I kind of changed my MO of like, okay, if we can figure out how to make a better ad, we can get more trust to make the creative choices we want, because that's really what we're looking for. And if you're looking for the ad to work, okay, I want to make it look pretty. So let's put those together. Let's try to figure out the best way to wordsmith this so I can get my way, and then it'll work as gangbusters as you. And then the next time you'll want to do that again because it made your brand look good. Because there's a lot of things that, like, yeah, you can do a crappy ad and have everybody see it, but how are they going to feel about your ad after, or your brand after a while if, all of the shots were blurry or overexposed a little bit, or white balance was off. There's just those little things that you don't see in not beginner work, really. The guy that ran the department, a couple people before Greg, was a guy that would go and say, what is this you're giving me? This is crap. He would just be relentless about, what do you think you're here for, type of a thing. Like, we're here to make ads as people are paying us for. It's good, but got to be grounded in like where your money comes from.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lesson that I learned very quickly when I was started out, which was that you really got to get over this idea of making work for yourself. Like, right? So if you're working on a spot, you might have this vision for what it is, and you might make it look fantastic. But if you're working for your own satisfaction, you're going to get spanked quickly by a client who has a different vision, right?
Yeah.
And I did. Like, at one time, I just got some terrible feedback for a commercial that I think looked pretty good. But they're like, they said something like, you just put everything in here that you wanted to try and see done, and not what I wanted to actually do. And I was like, man, that was a hard lesson to learn, but yeah, at least I learned it quick.
Yeah. The worst, though, is when you feel like you're listening to them really well, and the whole time you're paying attention to it, being really mindful to make an ad that they want, they're signing off on it, and then you get to the end and you realize they really didn't get your vision when you were pitching it the whole time, and they're like, they don't value what you made, and it's good. Yep. It's not just you made a mistake and threw the wrong production at it or whatever. It's like, no, this is solid, and what I know works, this does that. And that's just when it comes down to like, I remember how many times I talked to a salesman. Like, you can sell someone $100,000 worth of advertisement. You can sell them this ad. You can get them to like this ad too. Mm-hmm. Like, it's about how you present it to them. And really, if you knew, if I knew quite a few really, really talented salesmen or salespeople, because they're both male, female, that it was like, okay, this is good. I know this is good. I think it's a little different than what the client's going to look for, but can you sell it to them? But I remember even doing, you do tropes though. Like, I remember including pictures of this furniture store's grandchildren every commercial, just because I knew it. If they were in there, they would give a crap about everything else.
Yeah, and you always had the trick that the sales reps would run of putting the decision maker in the commercial, their face on TV, so that they get, when they're at the grocery store, they get hey, I saw you on TV. And it's like, I guess the commercial's working.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because that's also like the counter argument that sometimes happens. Is like, we could put you in the ad, but just someone noticing you, did you sell anything more? If it's a furniture store, did you sell any more love seats? You didn't? Well, that ad probably didn't work. I know it stroked your ego real well.
Well, I can tell you, I did a number of commercials where the decision maker really had no interest in being in the commercial, and the sales rep insisted on it because they liked that feedback. Yeah.
Well, and not everybody likes, some people want attention. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I don't. We're both in front of a camera right now. Yeah. And neither one of us intended that. But I think that it's interesting. And I don't know how many times that someone froze up. We had so in 2008, with the economic downturn, it was when Cash for Clunkers was being shopped around it was
Yeah,
just
that's a California program where California.
No, it was the national.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, this is an Obama program from the stimulus plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would buy your car for $1,200.
It was a certain year, it had to run there, and they would give you more money from it. And my dad worked at the dealerships at the time. Like, he felt like it was a big waste of cars because there was a bunch of cars that were still running, and it's actually better for the environment if you just don't make another car. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to sell cars, and so anyway, we wanted to make an ad, and we were doing it as a public service announcement because car dealerships, if you didn't know this, for most television ads, they're on the top list of clients.
Yeah, car commercials, at least in our industry, is car commercials and Indian casinos.
Yeah, or in lawyers. I mean, it's all the ones that need to be in your ear all the time because they have a big return on investment, yep. And they have to do it over and over again. It turns into realtors. Now it's going to be like developers, but at the time, man, the developers were all going broke, and and all the realtors were finding, burger flipping jobs and stuff. But so we had all of the owners from all of the dealerships in the area that would come in, which was most of them. And we were running this ad. They had a prompter to read, and they're going on a green screen. And we went from this one guy that's just slick. I mean, it reminded me of Cal Worthington. If you don't know that guy, he was a California car dealership, but he always had his dog Spot, and he had a giraffe or a tiger or something like that. That was it. But it was very much that used car salesman guy. But this guy I bet you told him to read 30 seconds, he'd just do it on the nose and be done. Really polished guy, but we wanted to use everybody in this ad. And I think we ended up making a few of them. And we got one guy, and he was like our third up. And he just, soon as that tally light came on, he just froze up. I could not get it out. Yeah. And it was just like, oh my gosh, they told us not to work with children and animals, but
yeah,
the amateur on camera person could be just as bad.
Yeah, I remember
control
just
of themselves.
Being shocked at how some people could not perform at all. Like just like that, stumbling over their words, or so often was the person who was just like a robot or a statue. Like,
yeah, or they couldn't look at the camera
directly. Come to my business. It's like.
Well, and that's usually was like they're being forced on air. That was usually what it's like. You know what? If you don't feel comfortable doing this, we should find someone else that does. But I don't know how many times I would show up to a restaurant, and the employees didn't know that we were shooting an ad. And the worst thing ever is to get in the way of a dining service. Like if you want happy customers, don't get a camera between them. Don't make me shoot the food before it goes to them. Like I had times where they were making food. They want us to shoot every plate, and then they go in and serve it. And it was like, this is a $30 steak or whatever it was, and you're going to make these people wait so I can shoot it? Why don't you just make some food for the ad,
not to mention,
throw it away or whatever else?
Every time you shoot food, you're going to get your hands in it. You're going to be posing it and all this other stuff.
Exactly. Right? And or we wouldn't know what it is. Like, do you want us to shoot this or whatever? I don't know how many different times they would want to shoot their back patio at sunset, and they want to show how beautiful it is. Like, well, we can show you the sunset, but we'll have to light the people. No, it's really nice in here. I'm like, well, yeah, the dynamic range of your eyes is really nice, but this isn't going to come out on video. And how do you convince that of somebody that knows nothing? So how you do it is you shoot it, you put it in, and they go, oh, yeah, you're right. And you have an alternative already ready to go. And here's what I would say we should do instead. Oh, great. Right. And I don't know how many times we do that. But the really absolute worst thing, though, was I have 30 seconds. I want to fill every damn second with word copy. If I'm paying for 30 seconds, I want every word I could possibly fit in that amount of time.
Yeah, it's like, let them know that we're open on Sundays. Let them know we have a sale on such and such.
Yeah.
Let them know we have the friendliest staff in town.
I always would give them the conversation of like, what was the last Walmart commercial you saw? I don't know. What was it? Falling prices. That was the takeaway from it. They didn't remember anything about it. I'm like, but you remember falling prices? Yeah. Okay, next time you see those ads, realize they don't talk about anything else. They don't talk about all the things you can buy at Walmart. If they just started listing all the things at Walmart in their ads, these would be 5-hour movies.
And you'd remember none of it.
And none of it. You wouldn't even sit through 10 minutes of it. And so, or you want to say so many things, or you have so many different sayings, and we'd always try to go, can we break that into other commercials? Which always was the upsell for us, was like, well, if you buy 3 ads, we'll take $100 off, and then you'll have 3 alternatives. So this is for when you want to push your dinner service, and this is for when you want to push lunch, and this is going to be just your ad that you run at any other time. But I would have really enjoyed knowing or having the demographics more focused. Like for us, it was like men this age, women this age. I mean, sometimes like Ellen or Oprah or those kinds of shows are like, of course you're talking to the after school mom or just the demographics were very clear, but other times it wasn't. So like, it was nice when you found a product. So like most things at the home are chosen or decided by the wife of the family or the head woman of the family. So it was like, you wouldn't even try to talk to the guys, and that's good. But that means my opinion about how I would make that choice isn't valid, if I'm not talking to someone that comes from my perspective. And so it's very interesting coming and thinking about those things. But it's just really interesting in that, like, out of all the times we made ads and everything, it's like the time out there. I can't go, oh, this ad I was really proud of. It was like, oh, I was really proud that we pulled this thing off that we were trying to do or whatever. And it's just interesting. The things that stick with me end up being those cheesy ads that I remember that we made. Like I made an ad for a guy that was a wrapping barbecue place in Orville nearby, and I
remember those commercials.
What was his line? It was you'll be real happy how I season my meat. It'll give your taste buds a treat, or something like that. It was just a really cheesy rhyme. Or I remember doing jingles that were just like they wanted a jingle. They had no money for a jingle. I brought my acoustic guitar in, picked 3 chords, and figured something out. And like, it's like, I don't think I'd be willing to do this, but I just want to get the ad off my plate. So let's figure out how to get this done and move on.
Okay, so Chris, we've gone over a lot of things about this, but let's one thing I don't think we've discussed. What would you say is the best thing about being a commercial producer?
Man, for me, because I was doing it in my hometown, I learned so much about the types of businesses and the type of industry, and got to have access to business owners tell me things about their business that you wouldn't get insight otherwise, and getting the opportunity to get candid information. So, if you wanted to find out how that sale did, they'd tell you. And, finding out those details I felt was really valuable for me. And like in life now that I don't do it, it's like, oh, I know the furniture place to go because he told me his markup is only 200%, not 300%. Or I know that it doesn't matter, or that, they don't sell the mattresses are the same. They just put different print on the fabric and give it a different name so that you can't price match them. Just different little things like that seem to enrich my life. I hardly ever watch commercials anymore. I have a hard time watching them because I want to analyze them. And I'm just lucky that I have a DVR, so I hardly ever watch local ads anymore. Plus, I still live in the market that I shot in, so sometimes seeing the ads that came out of the department that I was really proud of makes me sad. But
so I would say, I think that some people go into the TV industry and they think this is really going to be an exciting job. Like when you're at a party and you tell people what you do, they're going to be like, oh man, you're on TV.
My wife loved bragging that I work for the TV station. I thought that was funny. I'm like, I make $8 an hour, and she's bragging about that I work here. But anyhow,
yeah. So interesting that you got that. I never did. Like. It's like, I would say, oh, they make the TV commercials. They're like, oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Sometimes you would get like, oh, what have you made that I would know? And it's always like, the problem is the answer to that question is never a good one because the thing that they know is not the thing that you want to say that you did.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's so you're going, okay, what are my best spots? You mention it to them, they're like, what? I don't know.
Yeah. If I made it, I'd be willing to say I made it. So even if it was not the ad that I really wanted to make or whatever, I embrace the cheese. I'm a little cheesy in general myself. So but those are usually the ones that stick with people.
Yeah.
I really, the ones that turn into institutions though, like ads that I still see. So I made an ad a year and a half before I left. So 6.5 years ago, that's still running. And my son is about to turn 7. And that's the only ad he knows. And it has my voice on it. And we drive past billboards, and it's for a company called Rush Personnel. And he goes, Rush Personality, look, Dad, you can get them a job, because it's jobs and more jobs. I did the voiceover, but It wasn't a ad I was really proud of. I never would have thought that was the ad my son would know me by. But man, it's all sorts of cool. Man, your voice used to be on TV, and
So I think that's an interesting point, and I think that for me the best part was the same thing that you said, which is the insight into all these businesses. For the same reasons, like you knew exactly who to go to if you wanted to buy whatever, because you kind of got inside of like the tricks of how these businesses work. You also got I don't know about you, I feel like I've developed a little bit of business savvy in that I could sometimes walk into a new business and go, okay, I think these guys are going places, or like, I don't know how long this is going to last. When you work with as many businesses as we did.
Well, that's what I noticed was, so in 2007 it wasn't bad. In 2008 it was.
Yeah.
So my first year making ads, we were dealing with a lot of idiot business owners that were lucky that things were good. So they didn't have a tight ship. They didn't know what things were going on. They ran a loose business and that kind of thing. And then when things tightened up, they weren't able to adjust and make up those margins because it was booming and they were doing good, and they just quickly went away. And that was the thing that I really liked, is like after the next couple of years, I was only talking to the smart guys because they're the only ones that left that were willing to make the risk.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to see that. And the idea of a guarantee is such a funny thing, because it's something that people really latch onto. If I say you get 100% money back guarantee on this, you think I really believe in my product. But the thing is most people won't return anything. So it's actually just a really good pitch to get you to close, to buy that thing, to make that last choice to go with one or the other. And so many businesses weren't willing to make a guarantee on their product. And I remember just being so like, so you don't believe in your stuff. But that's okay, because most people won't even return it. And so you'll be on the positive, but they weren't willing to make that gamble.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Some didn't believe in sales. And it's like, dude, a sale will work until the sign falls off your building. If you have a sale outside, people come in for that, but they'll get to know you for that. And then all of a sudden they'll think you're the bargain place. So, there's a double-edged sword on a lot of this stuff. But the production side of all this stuff, I learned everything that I know from, I remember my first time I had to go shoot an exterior of a building, shot it, brought it back, and I didn't know how to level a tripod with the bubble.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like all sorts of crooked. And my boss was like, what's this?
Yeah.
And I was like, it looks good. I think it was exposed and focused right, but it was all crooked. Go shoot that again. Okay, go shoot it. And it was those hard truths. It was like, I remember it was one of those car ad places, but it was for a different production team. They send one guy there to like facilitate it all and tell them what cars to put on sale and that kind of thing. But we were running the actual production of everything, and my white balance was a little off. And the production, the manager of that company called me up and just laid into me, and it was really unfair. He yelled at me for that. We really didn't equal that kind of yelling. But I can tell you this much: I get my white balance right because it's embarrassing. I was embarrassed more than it made me mad the guy was yelling at me, but I was embarrassed that I wasn't doing my job as a professional should. And so, I really love teamwork. So it was really cool to go, okay, I love audio. I love being a director or producing something. I'm going to do this. You're going to handle the camera. So my guy, Casey, my buddy that we worked together for so long, he always had money focus and really great exposure. And this is like when all you had was zebras through a black and white viewfinder to get it right. And I remember I just was always a little hot or a little dark, and the tools to make them a little darker, a little brighter in the computer was not the way they are now. Now we get really lucky and adjusting white balance is no big deal. Depending on what you're shooting on and how much it degrades the image, but typically it's not that hard to change. The good thing is when you're shooting an SD, we could be a little soft and no one would really know because it's such low resolution anyway. I remember when getting into HD and I was like, man, you better check your focus twice before you start rolling every time.
That's one thing I definitely learned, is the value of learning through repetition.
Yeah.
Like in that kind of work at the volume that it is, you do the same thing over and over again, and every single day you get pretty dang good at it.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I felt like, let's see, I was doing this for 5 years or something. Between when I started and when I ended, I think I grew so much in my ability to direct talent. So we did a lot of voiceover work with radio personalities, and we would invite them into the studio and put them in the booth and listen to them and give them feedback. And it's like, when you do 300 voiceovers and you're directing someone, you get pretty dang good about getting the right, performance out of them.
Yeah.
A little less so when you're talking about directing amateurs on screen. That's really difficult.
Yeah.
But you do start to learn the tricks. Certainly when you're shooting, like you said, aiming through a little tiny viewfinder, you get pretty dang good at making sure everything is right and going through all the checklists. And
totally. I mean, we had news at the station, and we also made the promos for the news station and for the TV station in general. But that it was always so nice to shoot with the anchors because they could read a prompter, they could read it well. We could get something in one take if the performance was good. Like, I didn't have to shoot it 5 or 6 times and read it back and give them inflection. Now, we luckily at Casey, Greg, and I in our team, we all felt comfortable doing voiceovers. So we never did out of house voiceovers until last couple of years, where we were like, if we really want this to be better than the competition, we need to have a competitive difference. And having professional voiceovers is a big, big benefit. But the cost of them is significant. I mean, we had a range from $25 to $500 for a 30-second read.
Yeah.
And then we finally found a company that would give us all we can eat voiceovers for it was like $300 a month.
Yeah.
And we could do, it was like 30 to 40 voiceovers, which was about the amount of ads we were doing a month at the time or whatever. And they would do it, and we could give them, ask them. But we had a voice for the station that I remember him calling us up, and he had a microphone always connected to his phone, so we always had that big voice.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was interesting. But he was from Texas, or Florida, so he'd say some words weird. So the Bengals were the Bingles, just the way he pronounced it, and it was just interesting. I never would have thought that, but I remember making an ad for a shoe company, and I didn't know how to say this brand, and it was early in the morning, and I'm like, "There's no shoe stores open. I'm going to call New York." And I'm just going to ask them, "Hey, you carry this? How do you say that brand?" Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Bye. Just trying to find different ways to work around things. I mean, to making ads for what was it, Terry Fader, the guy that does ventriloquist and voices and stuff, and gotten the green light. Like, here's my YouTube channel. It was like, I'm going to make an ad just from the videos on your YouTube channel. That seems kind of fun. Like, I'm not in control of any of these elements, but all I got to do is like pull out little sound bites of things and pizzazz and make sure I figure out my transitions and make sure the audio sounds good, and you're done.
Man, I got to the most fun I ever had making a commercial, at least in post, was I got to make a commercial for Tim and Eric's live tour. You familiar with Tim and Eric?
Were they morning show guys?
No, Tim and Eric are like, they were on Adult Swim.
Okay.
They were like absurdist comedy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like just really wacky stuff. And it was the same kind of thing where it's like, here's some YouTube videos. And it's like, I was just did the weirdest stuff, like turned the guy into a shark and, like had one guy like having a conversation with Captain Picard, it's just like the wildest things. It was so much fun.
I love the flash in the pan ads just for the sake of, you got them done, they aired, and then they disappeared. And that was really nice because it was like, that event happened. It's not going to happen again. You made that ad, you don't have to touch it again, versus like the ad that I have to refresh every year from footage so long ago. And I have to make sure to block out this one person because they fired them because they were embezzling, but they like the shot.
Yeah.
So I got to figure out how to hide the person or whatever. It's just the amazing different things that you'd think, oh man, blurring someone's face out and that kind of thing. Like, oh, you doing cops? No, I had to get them out of an ad. Like, just learning all sorts of little things that are like more solutions to just making it even happen. I remember we had one guy who was like, I want someone running on a treadmill, and then I want them to turn into a sweat drop, like it was a Gatorade commercial at the time, and then them do this kind of that, and it's like, dude, you don't have the budget for elephants and helicopters, so you're not going to get that. We're not in Hollywood, unfortunately, and the money's just not there. But that's a really bad thing. I remember one of the sales managers we had, he said, I had a producer that came in, and he would, put his hands out and make the 16 by 9 and look through it. And he'd go, no, you don't have enough budget, and just walk out of the room. And man, I never felt like I could be above anything making some work. And it's like, well, if that's your budget, we'll figure out how to make it happen in that. It's the same thing as like, at work, if the garbage needs to be emptied, just do it. Just get it emptied, and if you're willing to do that and you're willing to be a team player and be a company guy, then likely you're going to be able to fit in and work those things. And those are really difficult things for people that are creatives to accept. And for me, I came from doing audio production and was really hungry doing that. I really loved doing music production, but it didn't feed me at all. So I had to do something. And luckily it was like, well, I can have the fun. I can get all my creative juices out. But you know what? If I don't get it on this one, I'm going to get on the next one. And that was how it always was. It's like, I'm going to make 5 ads this week. So one of them I'm going to love. The other ones I'm just going to make. Also,
I think that, I don't know, it felt like, doing these commercials that, like we were talking about, the really the best part of the job really didn't have anything to do with making a beautiful commercial. It was always nice to make something that was really beautiful that you put in your demo reel, but it's the other things that made the job satisfying, at least to me. So like the one thing we talked about of like getting to know the businesses around.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I really enjoyed was like there was just kind of like a magical quality of your own work spontaneously appearing on TV, we would go out to dinner or something at a sports bar and everyone's watching TV and then one of my spots would come up and, you don't really get anything out of that. No one like turns over to you and goes, hey, good job or anything. It's just like, this is just kind of a magical thing. I think that's conjured up. It happened all the time too. Restaurants, it happened at the gym. I'd be like on the treadmill and everyone's out there and then my commercials. Like I once had I was at the gym and there was like 7 screens on it and it's like 4 of them were running my commercials, like different ones simultaneously.
Yeah. I was at a Super Bowl party at a local place that's really big, giant screens, and it was the Super Bowl. It was in CBS, so it was our Super Bowl, and there goes my ad, and like there's 200-300 people in that room and they're watching all that stuff. And it's just like, no one knows that's my work. That's cool. I loved that anonymity about it because I wasn't me in front, but you could see my work and that kind of thing. It's, the coolest thing I'd have to say. So went with Greg and Casey to a Tool concert once. It was at an arena and, there's probably 45,000 people there. And just as the lights go down, Greg turns over to me and he goes, hey, this many people every night see your ads. And it's like, that was really impactful to me because it was like, I'm in a room, I can really see the amount of people. You make an ad, you throw it on the commercial. I don't see the eyeballs that see this, but that was really, really impactful to me. I was like, damn, I can be really proud of that. Like that, although it's probably the same 100,000 people over and over seeing my ads, it's, regardless, they've seen a lot of my work. And I mean, even 5 years later, it's crazy that I still have ads running that I made. And some of them are cobbled together from, like they made a change on them and that kind of stuff. And it's always sad to be like, oh, that's how you fixed it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just love being the magician. It's like if you go, hey, we need to do this, and it's like, man, that seems like I need to cover up a graphic because I don't have the original ad or whatever, that kind of thing. It was like, I want to make sure that no one knows watching this that I covered something up. I want it to look so good that it looks like it fits in this the way it was originally supposed to be. And, following the styling and even, I remember even trying to make graphics a little more blurry because the background and it was a couple generations of tapes or something like that. It's like, I want this to look like it was supposed to be this way, not just thrown together to make it work.
The crazy thing, and this is something it took me a long time to figure out, is that you'll look at something for so long and really tweak it, right? So like you want a graphic to match the quality of video in the background, so you like actually start to degrade it a little bit, or you rough up the edges or whatever. You're looking at that for a long time, and you can see when it looks right and when it doesn't look right because you're spending a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's on TV and it goes by in an instant, and most people have no idea. It could have been like sloppy work.
And it would work fine.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Well, but that was the thing for me. It was like, I got to find these things that I really care about that aren't going to add a lot to the work, but that are going to really please me. And that was the biggest thing. Is finding those things in the work you were doing that, if you like shooting, cool. What kind of shooting? I want to work on my handheld. I want to work on my glide cam. I want to do a cool jib shot. I want to do a dolly shot. All that kind of stuff. And we didn't have drones at the time. I'm sure I would have wanted to be that too. It just, getting to have those things, and it's like, oh, I only need one jib shot in a commercial because, you only need one establishing shot, and a bunch of jib shots makes a really slow commercial.
Yep.
And just learning those things is just really cool. I wouldn't give it. I wouldn't want to do it any other way. And I surely would say that I learned every aspect the hard way of video production. Just like until it worked right. And it wasn't until I started working at Videomaker that I'm like, oh, we did this. This is how we did it.
Yeah, didn't know what the name of it was.
Well, like we did it, and it was through like the hard knocks of like, oh, how do we want to make this work? And we came out with the same thing as the actual technique. So from just observing media and trying to mimic that and being inspired by it, that we were able to do other things. It's like
trial and error, though, right?
Totally.
Like when I was doing it, it took me a long time to figure out how to get like really nice lighting outdoors, like in the sun. How do you shoot in those circumstances? So it's like I do several shoots, and each time it gets a little bit better. And at the time, even on Videomaker, there wasn't really any good resource for like really explaining how that worked. But then eventually you look at it on a screen and someone finally explains how you get a nice light outdoors. It's like, I did get there, but man, I wish I had that resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I started.
Well, it's so funny because the most excited thing I was about working for Videomaker is we were stuck with the same lights for the whole time I worked there. I touched 3 different cameras in 7 years total, and the nicest one was a crop sensor DSLR with a lot of compression. And I was just excited to use nicer, higher quality gear. And it's just funny how I take it for granted now because we just have such abundance. And it's like I almost like, what was it like to have to like I couldn't the so compressed that I couldn't change the shadows without adding a crap load of noise, right? Or something. But that like I was so excited about that, and it really, I kind of pined for those days again. It's like I wish that I had the same camera so I could know that camera how it does everything that I do. But I'm so agnostic here. It's like, well, what camera will fit this thing we're doing? And like, well, I was shooting in the dark earlier, shooting some dynamic range tests, and it was I didn't know where the menu button was by feel, and that was weird to me because it's like, oh man, every camera I know, I know where that is, but I'm like, I don't have muscle memory on this camera. I just don't use it enough. But I think it's a great place to be, but I wouldn't be where I'm at without having some guidance, a lot of direction, but also be willing to listen and have humility to learn from those mistakes and to learn where your happiness can be and learn where your creative can be expressed. It wasn't always, I mean, you always get a new transition, you get a new look, you get a new thing, and you want to use it. And, if you're doing such volume, the nice thing is you can just hold that in your back pocket till it fits something that you actually are doing, which is nice. But sometimes you can shoehorn it in, or whatever. But that anything can happen today. I could have to fix something that I never fixed before, and I can find an answer for that and be really proud of how that came out. That's the stuff, that gratification of like, I didn't have anything. There was not one image or frame or not even an idea for this. And at the end of the day, I finished. And like these days, I'm stoked when I finish like everything I did on a Friday, and I can go drink my beer on the weekends. And it was like, man, I was drinking a lot more beers because I was finishing a commercial every night, and I was like, oh, let's celebrate. I was also younger, but it's just that's the thing that is really cool about that turn. We were really jealous of an agency that was local that had some Emmys. And he got he just was able to do his ideas. He was able to charge more for it. And I remember being very jealous of that, like being like, man, you could charge what it's actually should cost, like a couple grand to make this ad. You can spend the time of creating the ideas and talking to the people and making sure you have the right people in the scene and setting up the location and making sure you have this control over the location and all that kind of stuff. You're using the right equipment and, whatever. And, I don't know if I would have wanted that as much because you wouldn't have been doing as much. And I don't know, it just seemed a lot slower because if I wasn't making that many ads, I remember when we weren't busy, it was like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks now. You and I were in it during the Great Recession, right? And,
yeah.
And when it slows down, it sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks.
Crap, I'm cleaning off my keyboard.
Yeah.
I'm mastering out projects and stuff like that. So, but I think it's a really great industry, and I was always very excited to bring on new people. And the TV stations and the cable places are the places to start. There's hardly anything outside of the management area that would pay a family adult, someone that needs to pay for more than themselves in those places, unless you're living in bigger markets. And I'm talking like top 30, we're in market 131, and just 80 or 90 miles south of us is market 30. So, 100 markets in that many miles is pretty crazy. And the expectations there are far higher, and the amount of churn is far less. But I don't see high as much, I think you can do that same quality as a regional ad that is for a hospital or whatever with a small team, if you just have the right you think about it enough and you make a good, project out of it.
Yep.
Anyone can run a red. Not saying that a red's going to change everything, but it's sure going to change the look of something, and obviously bring it into a higher production value when it comes to, especially comparing it to an ad that was shot on some consumer camera. Even
now, I think that there's some opportunity for folks, even if you live in a place that's not near a station or something, or maybe there is a station and there's just no openings. I have to think that there's opportunity being independent and making ads for YouTube. I don't know about you, but I feel like I hop on YouTube and occasionally I see an ad for a local business, but it's not common.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there for someone who wants to go out and understand not just the video production side of making commercials, but the sort of advertising and business side of ads. That you could really turn that into a business of making ads and running them online.
I felt like, I could have walked away from running the department and done something on my own and made really good money. The thing is, I would have had to sell myself the work and find new clients, and that was the not fun part of the whole work.
Yeah, that's true.
And it always was the joke of like the salesman. You just come in, you'd convince somebody, you shake their hand, then you make all the big bucks, and then we do all the work. And that is true. There are times when they couldn't be involved much more, but there's a lot of value in having the work brought to you. And that was the thing that I really, we had 9 salesmen or salespeople selling all the time. So, if we didn't have work, they were screwing up. And so it was at least not the weight on us that we weren't busy wasn't on us. It was just, when are you guys going to bring us another ad to shoot?
Yeah.
And for us, the marketing was just, okay, how do we convince you to make 3 ads instead of 1? How can I make this relationship so that you want to make all your ads with us and not every other one because the Fox station is willing to give you a free one every quarter? And, like, don't you want your ads to be always good? How do we do it so you don't do that? And it's a fight, but I always just thought it was fun at that level.
Yep.
And like I said, it's because you have so much volume, or if you could. I don't think everybody has the opportunity to have that volume depending on your market and how successful the sales team is or whatever. But that's a really great place to be in, and it's not hard to sell a $300-500 commercial, especially when it costs way more just to, design a billboard or something else.
Yeah, I always thought, I thought the same thing, that you could go independent and just do production. I felt at the time that I could go independent and I would have enough clients in the area that liked working with me that I could do a lot of work. But if you got to sell them for the same price that the stations were selling them for, then harder to do. Yeah, when I found I just couldn't do that if I didn't have the help. So it's like we have 3 people here, so we can keep the ball rolling all the time. And one person, you just get to places that are lulls, and so you get in those little rough spots. That little, all of a sudden, no, I got to work up, and so you just can't keep that momentum going. And so that's the big thing, is making sure you have the help you need and that kind of thing. But I think commercials, as far as doing that work, we made a lot of radio ads because you'd make a commercial, and if you did a good enough job writing the words, that it'd work as a radio ad as well. Yeah, a good place to make extra money. Obviously, pre-rolls online. Now it's Spotify ads. Yelp
videos. So just someone talking about their business, a lot of services, just so you could, because, it's really hard to get the aw shucks out sometimes. And so it's like good. Some people want the person that's a real person that, I can come in and trust you because it just seems like I'm talking to my brother, or whatever. And so there's a lot of places to, I think, make good money if you're willing to do those things. I don't think I'd be willing to go get that stuff. And I've done some ads since I've left the station, and it's only been the easy stuff that's easy to pick up. But that's also because I'm busy 9
you
to 5.
got a full-time job.
I'm not going to, if I was not busy in the middle of the day, I'd probably be looking for a lot more work just because I can't stand being idle. So,
yeah. All right, well, let's see. We've been going for more than an hour on this topic. We had a number of other topics, but I don't think we're going to get to them this week. So I guess we'll call it there. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
Ta-ta.
Thanks, everyone, for listening this week. Again, I want to remind you all that this podcast's future relies on positive feedback, so please consider leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps a lot. For Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker Podcast. We'll catch you next time.